Welcome to The Passion Pod with your host, Chris Johnson. Thanks for joining us. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the feature presentation.
Welcome back, friends. Today I drove from my hotel, but the day before I drove 2 days fully. I was going to take 3, but I took 2 days to drive over 1,200 miles from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, all the way down to Austin, Texas. Kind of specifically for this interview, but not specifically for this interview. I followed this artist's art for a long time, not knowing who the artist was. I saw it in Thrasher and I was like, this is kind of sick. I like how grungy it is, but I'm not really sure who this is. Eventually it came to me through me growing up and being interested, and found out, whoa, Michael Sieben's pretty dope. He's got this company. I like these boards. And then we're in the age of the internet where all of a sudden I'm doing interviews and you can just talk to anybody that you want to. So I sent a DM and thankfully he's like, yeah, I would do an interview. And I'm like, well, where do you live? He goes, well, Austin, Texas. It's like, shit, I'm going there in 2 weeks anyways to interview somebody else. Are you free? He was like, yeah, I can make this work for you. So anyways, thank you so much for having me. Welcome to the show, Michael Sieben.
Thanks for having me in my house.
Yeah, dude, this is a dope house. You said you moved here a little while ago, but have you always lived in Austin? Where are you from?
I grew up in Sieben, Texas, which is an hour south of here.
Is it like a little small town? Or?
It's real. It's about 22,000, so pretty small. And went to high school there, went to college there for a few years, dropped out of college, moved to Colorado for about 2 years.
Cool.
And then I moved back to Austin to finish my degree. And that was in 96, and I've been here ever since.
Was that an art degree?
Yeah, I have a degree in fine art from the University of Texas.
What were the most important things you learned from your art degree that actually carried over? Because I hear both sides. I hear people that think it's really valuable, but I've heard a bunch of artists say that's, art school stupid.
What I got out of it was a lot of studio time. I don't know if I necessarily got any great advice from any professors. I had a lot of studio time, so a lot of time to work on art. And I learned how to screen print while I was at UT, which that was probably the biggest takeaway, because I'd always been interested in screen printing because of skateboard graphics, T-shirts, stickers. So to actually see that process and learn about it and have equipment and be able to start printing T-shirts and stuff like that, that was probably the most valuable takeaway that I got.
See, I got that in high school for free. You're blowing
it. We did not have that at my high school.
My favorite class, most useful class, was print graphics. We had that when I was in high school, and I made tons of bootleg stickers and T-shirts and all that type of stuff. And then never thought I would use it again. Photoshopped memes periodically because it was funny to me. And then years later, I have my own skateboard shop, and I'm like doing graphics and doing stuff, not really thinking about it. And one day it hit me. I'm like, dang, this is really dope that I know how to do this.
Yeah,
not that many people know how to do this.
We didn't even have I think there was a digital lab at UT at the time, but I didn't have access to it. So it was all like very old school screen printing with just burning transparencies, doing them by hand with ink on Mylar and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But,
and
it was cool.
Now kids just have iPads and they'll just draw whatever they want and order stickers online, and they're here in a week.
Yeah, but just cool too.
Yeah, it's cool.
I wish I had that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, very different. But there's something valuable about having screen prints and stuff. And I like that there are still limited runs of all these different things. I don't know that necessarily a lot of the younger generation places a ton of value in it or sees that or whatever, but there is a market for people that do have a huge appreciation for even just like screen printed like band posters and all that type of stuff, because of it feels different. It physically feels different. Anyways, getting back to art. So who were you? I'll shout him out because he bailed on me because his visa got canceled. So if Luca hears this, dude, he said he would do another one. Anyways, my favorite artist is Luca Buffo, who's a French artist. I discovered him in Japan. I saw these crazy bright, colorful characters painted on like a skateboard mag, but blown up, like a skateboard photo. And I was like, what is this? This is so sick. Didn't even know who he was. And then eventually figured out who he was later on. That's the dude that inspired me to paint. And now I talk to him on Instagram, which is so sick, and eventually we'll interview him. And I found a ton of artists ever since that have been really inspiring to me, including you. But who are your earlier inspirations that got you interested in drawing, and when did you actually start getting into that stuff?
I was into drawing from the time I was a little kid. Yeah. So I was probably my first big influence was Maurice Sendak, who did Where the Wild Things Are.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So as a kid, I was just really into, I don't know, looking at those books and studying kind of how they were. That was the first thing that kind of clicked, where I remember looking at the books and being like, oh, someone drew this. Yeah. And then looking at the line work and Dr. Seuss, Richard Scarry, just a lot of like popular children's book illustrators from the 70s. In the 80s, I started skating, and super cliche, but going into my first skate shop and seeing that wall of boards was like, I mean, I still remember it like pretty vividly, but then started getting Thrasher Magazine, and Pusshead was a staff artist for Thrasher.
Oh, okay.
You should look his stuff up, but
I will.
Pretty. He did graphics for Zorlak Skateboards, which is based out of Texas also, so there's a little connection there for me as a kid. But Vernon Cortland Johnson, who was doing stuff for Powell, Jim Phillips doing stuff for Santa Cruz. But so yeah, skateboard graphic illustrators of the 80s. That was really like blew my mind as a 12-year-old when I started looking at those graphics.
Did you read the Jim Phillips book?
Yeah.
The whole art book? I just got it, and I was reading it. I'm not done with it. I'm only like, I don't know, 10 pages in, but I'm already like, I need to finish this book.
Yeah,
I haven't actually,
cool.
I'm going to have to ask you later on to give me some art book recommendations. I've never been into the like table book art book thing. I don't know why I haven't, but recently started reading books like that, and I'm like, I've been missing out for 32 years.
I don't have many either, but I have a couple. But
yeah, Jim Phillips being one of them. Let's give a shout out to whatever that skate shop was. What was the skate shop? You said you remember kind of vividly the situation. What was it, and what role did that kind of play in your life at the time?
The first shop that I remember going into was Zulu's in San Antonio.
Oh, okay.
I think it was on Perrin Vital. Yeah, as a kid, and that was just, you know, my parents drove me there, and and I had skateboarding magazines, but I hadn't been to a shop yet.
Yeah, and
there were a couple in Central Texas then, but not many, like a handful. There's a shop in New Braunfels called Dex, that DEX. Yeah, it was. It seemed very exotic, like seeing these things. Most of the brands are from California, so to like have a piece of art imported from the cool coast.
Yeah, well, and it's just a different atmosphere in most skate shops, where kind of every other store you would go to, it's very retail, but skate shops are kind of like to their own fault most of the time. They like don't really sell you anything. Yeah, and I'm kind of in the same boat where like I was in sales for a long time. I just don't like selling stuff to people. I really don't. So when people come into my shop, it very much is just like a hangout spot more than anything. So it builds a very different culture than you experience in like an average store.
And it was terrifying too, as a little kid, totally. and you know, you're new to the culture. You don't know anything about it, so it's like you don't even know what to ask for, or you don't want to get made fun of by the older guys. Yeah. And it was not such a kindler, gentler culture back then.
It was kind of like the mid-90s movie. I watched that finally the other day, and I was like, I love how this portrays it, but I hope parents don't see this, because it's not that gnarly. But there is kind of the, like, there's all these older guys that very much are kind of whatever, doing their thing, you know, and they don't like rules. And so for the younger kid, especially if they're with their mom, sometimes it's a little bit scary. I keep my shop very like kid friendly.
I mean, I go to No Complies, the local shop here in Austin. I go there all the time, and there's always parents in there, and there's a coffee shop, and there's it seems very kind, and I don't see kids being vibed or you know.
Skate shops can't afford to do it anymore.
Doesn't seem like it.
They definitely can't.
Everyone seems very friendly there.
Getting back to art, you got a degree in art, but then what did you first do in art? Did you hop right into the skateboarding world? Did you get hired into that, or what did you do for art job-wise? How did that become a career?
No, it was not immediate. It took a while to get my foot in the door. Graduated in '99 from UT, and luckily you heard about the internet?
It's like I've heard about it, yeah.
The internet was kind of bubbling to the surface around that time. So early on, I hired someone to build a website for me. I was like pretty proactive, where I was like, oh, this is an opportunity to get my work seen outside of Austin. So hired someone to build a website for me, and I was pretty good about updating it. I think it was like a Flash site. I don't know if you remember Flash animation. So it was like had animations going on, and I was like pretty good about updating it with projects and news. And but no, I worked in a toy store when I graduated from UT. I worked retail. I worked as a technical illustrator for an engineering company called National Instruments. Okay. In a like crummy cubicle job.
Like you designed toys, or what did you?
No, just worked retail, just like selling.
Sold them. Okay.
Like, worked like a skate shop, a toy shop, selling toys. And but at the time, I was making a lot of skate zines with a friend of mine, Lee Brooks, who was a skate photographer. I guess he still is. He doesn't shoot much anymore. but I was making tons of Xerox little magazines.
Yeah.
And we were just cranking them out. So we were documenting our scene here in Austin. So we were just always out shooting photos and doing like interviewing our friends and trying to come up with like little concepts for articles. And as we were doing that, I was like building up a pretty big volume of work. And then my buddy Lee kind of quit shooting photos for a while, and then I switched gears and started making a zine by myself called Program from India.
Okay.
It was just me, and I came up with like a pen name, a fake persona. This guy named David Dittmeyer, who was supposed to be the editor of this zine, and he was just like a middle-aged man completely falling apart, and he was like jumping from one fast food job to the other and getting kicked off of couches. But that was a moment where I started really focusing on writing. There was some art in it, but it was really like absurdist humor. And I started sending those out to like Big Brother, and like a friend of mine knew Ed Templeton, I saw Ed Templeton. I gave him zines, but I was trying to get them in anyone's hands who I thought might know someone within the industry. So I wasn't just sending it to Thrasher. I was like,
sure,
who do I know who knows someone who works at Thrasher to like organically try to get this thing into people's hands. So a buddy of mine knew Dave Carney, and I'm like,
oh yeah,
sending him zines. I'm like, can you just give one to Dave? Like, I don't want to hit him up through email or however.
Right.
So through doing zines is kind of how I got my foot in the door as far as like doing graphics for companies and starting to do some writing for magazines.
Wow. I mean, people, if you want to get a hold of somebody, that's like, it's just about being ambitious and resourceful. You can get a hold of almost anybody in today's world if you know what you're doing. And I've gotten a lot of little secrets from different people of how they get a hold, like what their strategies are. But the one that I'll just drop right here for anybody is, you may not be able to get a hold of that person, but you can get a hold of somebody that knows that person.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people. I mean, you could just go to who they follow on Instagram, look, and you could dive enough to figure out if they're a personal friend.
Yeah.
You can get a message to that person. If they think it's worth that other person's time, they'll send it.
Yeah.
You can get a hold of people if you're resourceful enough. And a lot of times those people, if they do get those messages, they're like, damn, they really went out of their way to get this message to me.
And it's also like, what's the message? You know, is the message hey, you're cool. You know,
well, yeah,
like,
then they won't send it over. But you know what I mean? If it is worth their time.
Yeah. So if it's like, if you're
would.
trying to present them with like a gift or like something you've poured your heart into, and you're like, hey, I don't want anything in return. I just enjoy this.
Totally. Yeah.
And maybe pass it on to someone at a magazine, something like
well,
that. You know, there's always like the hook there. But if it's like, if there's like something attached to like, hey, I enjoy what you're doing. Here's what I'm doing. Like, if you have time, check it out, you know, and it's not just something that's easily thrown away.
Totally.
Which goes back to like a physical thing too, as far as like what I was sending were physical things. It wasn't, it wasn't like, here's a link to a thing or that you can just hit delete. It was like, you'd have to physically throw the thing away, which is a little harder. It demands like a little more like inspection than just sort of like an email like, hey, check out my page, check out my account.
Well, if it shows that you valued their time enough that you put in all this time and energy into creating this thing for them to look at or whatever, then a lot of times they're a lot more responsive. And it's even that way with the show, you know what I mean? Of me telling people, no, I will fly or drive to you.
Yeah.
Then a lot more people will say, oh, well, if you value my time enough that you want to do that, then yeah, I can give you, an hour or whatever, rather than if I just was like, hey, hop on a Zoom. Yeah. I think a lot of people would be like, well,
it impressed me because I just assumed when you hit me up to do this, I was like, oh yeah, what, an hour on Zoom is what I assumed it would be. And then whenever you followed up and you're like, I'm driving out there, I was like, oh, okay, this is something like, it elevated it in my mind where I was like, oh, you're like, we're physically meeting up to do a podcast.
It's not necessarily the most like financially beneficial way to do it, but I really do the show, and it has grown to be a bigger thing. But I did the show because I like meeting people and I enjoy the interaction. Yeah. And like I was telling you off mic, if I was doing it just digitally, I don't think I would really enjoy it enough to make it worth all the editing and everything else that I have to do for it. Yeah. In which case I just wouldn't do it. So it's kind of like, how can I make it work? And thankfully the show's gotten to a point now where it's like, not necessarily that I can fund this whole trip based on like a couple interviews, but there's enough going on that it kind of works. Like when I'm going to be going to New York, and I'll be able to kind of fund that trip through the different things I do with the show. So what was the first setup? Was it Thrasher or was it Big Brother? Like, how did you get in? You said you sent it to Dave Carney. he was only Big Brother, right? Or did he work at Thrasher or something?
No, he was at Big Brother.
Yeah.
And my buddy Roger Skateboards was living in LA. That's who Roger Skateboards is named after, is my buddy Roger Skateboards. But he was friends with Dave, so I was sending zines to him, and I would always send him extra and just say like, hey, if you see Dave, and I didn't know Dave, but they were friends, so I was like, I know he's interested in this content. It's like humorous and it's skateboarding. If you see Dave, hand some off. If not, that's fine too.
Yeah.
So I think he was giving zines to Dave Carney. He probably sent me an email. I don't even know how he contacted me, but asked if I wanted to contribute some articles to Big Brother. So I was sending in just little, kind of like little sidebars. Like it was never an interview, or it was just little funny writings with little photos and stuff. So
would you like Xerox them and like email them that kind of way?
Or was it like physically mailing him like photos, if I remember correctly. So I was like, and they were shitty photos. It wasn't like skate photos. It was like a photo of my toothbrush. So like
that's Big Brother though.
Yeah. So it fit right in. So I think I was like, I would email them the words and then send the photos, and they would scan them if I remember correctly. And around the same time, I went to see Fugazi here in Austin, and a good buddy of mine, Kerry Jackson, he was like, hey, Ed Templeton's following Fugazi on this tour. He's going to be in Austin. Cool. You should bring him some zines and like give him some zines. And I remember struggling with that idea. It felt really opportunistic because I didn't know Ed. Yeah. And I remember talking to Kerry, and he was like, dude, he collects skate zines. Like what's weird about that? He would probably be hyped. He's on a road trip. Yeah. You're just giving him content to read. So I was like, yeah, you're right. I should get over this. So made extra copies of zines. After the show, there's like a line of people that wanted to say hi to Ed.
Yeah, he's a superstar in the skate world at the time,
And a lot of crossover with Fugazi fans and Ed Templeton fans. So there's like people waiting to meet Ed. He's out in front of the space, and went up and sheepishly just gave him a little package, and was just like, hey, I don't want to eat up too much of your time. These are just some skate zines I made. Hope you dig them. And then he went back to Huntington Beach, and he's good friends with Mike Burnett, who's currently the editor of Thrasher. Right. But I think Mike was at his house, and he was like, hey, you should check out this dude's zines, this guy in Austin. I think you'll like these. So then he handed them off to Mike Burnett. Yeah. And then this was all 20 years ago. So if my memory is not quite right, at one point Burnett came through Austin on a skate trip with Thrasher, and we met up, and I think it was like the sniff test, So like we went skating and hung out, and I think he was like kind of, vetting me, making sure I wasn't like, maybe I am a little weird. Not too weird.
With Thrasher, you're supposed to be.
Supposed to be a little weird. Yeah. Yeah, and then I think it was shortly after that, I fully remember where I was when he called me. I was like, oh shit, Mike Burnett's calling, and offered me a staff position with the magazine, where he was like, and I, it wasn't some like full-time job, but he was just like, hey, would you want to write for Thrasher? Like you could have a page in every mag and be a staff writer, illustrator. And it's just like, definitely didn't have to mull it over. I was like,
right, totally.
Yeah, 100%. That would be sick. And that's really, I'd done maybe some skate graphics or, a couple little things in Big Brother, but I mean, that was like the platform where I was like, now I'm doing what I'm already doing. I'm doing art and I'm writing, but now it's going in Thrasher to whatever.
The biggest publication. Like what other one would you want? You know what I mean? That's kind of like, there are other things you could pop through, not to like drop all the different mags, but there's a lot of different things you could do. But that's like the one you want to do.
Yeah, and that was the one I grew up on. That was since like 87 had a subscription, and so forever grateful to Mike Burnett for like offer.
Yeah, well, and the fact that he did that when you weren't local kind of blows my mind, because that's like not in today's world where you can Zoom call each other. Like, and you know what I mean, and have your graphics on the shared screen and do all that stuff. Like, for him to want to work with somebody remotely at that point in time is kind of mind-blowing and crazy to me.
For sure. And I wasn't tapped. I mean, I think what I was doing was kind of intentionally, it was humorous, but it had to do with like an outsider's point of view a little bit. So I think that was attracted to him, I'm assuming. Yeah. But for sure, I was not in San Francisco. I wasn't in LA. I wasn't in New York. I wasn't surrounded by like cool skate shit going on.
Yeah.
It was just like me like percolating my own things.
Did you feel the draw then? Did you feel pressure to move out there at any point in time?
Not really. I mean, I wasn't a photographer, so it was, I can,
Yeah,
I don't need to be around anyone
anywhere.
to draw a picture, but
Sure.
I think it kind of, I don't know. I mean, I think even to this day, it's like, I think my purity or like my passion for it, it's like, I think it's helped that I did not immerse myself in the skate industry by like moving to LA and just, being in a warehouse surrounded by boards. Like, I still feel kind of like, I'm not an outsider, but you can still go skate in a little town around here and have people yell at you, like it's the 80s, like in a shitty movie or something.
Sure. And I mean, Austin's not a small town by any means.
For
so there's
sure,
still,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that you hear that with like Minneapolis. People are like, yeah, I'm just staying away. I'm like, Minneapolis is a big city. There's a huge skate scene there.
For
but
sure.
It's not, it's not LA. But so how did your art then, because obviously, you get a job writing for Thrasher, but it's not like, okay, cool, I made the big bucks, I've made it now. It's like you're still doing a lot of art, I imagine, at the time. How did kind of your art career evolve as you kind of took that position? What was happening with your art at the time?
Nothing was happening as far as
Just
like
on the back
selling
burner?
it.
Yeah.
Oh no, I mean I was like making a lot of it, but
Yeah.
I got invited to be in a show in New York. I mean, this would have been like early 2000s.
Yeah.
And it was a huge group show, and I think it was called Decipher was the name of it. And it was like Shepard Fairey was in it, and I don't even like Doze Green, like big graffiti artists and street artists, and there was a huge roster. Say there's like 50 people in it, but I somehow I got invited to be in this show, and I just remember thinking like, oh, like I've made it. I'm gonna go to New York, and I'm in an art show, and now my art career will take off.
Yeah.
And it was like, not that it wasn't fun, but it was the complete opposite of that. I was like, went out to this huge group show. My art didn't sell. Nothing happened after that, but it was pretty eye-opening in that the people who were putting the show on, they were just kids, kind of,
Right.
and I was like, oh, like I assumed it would be through some institution, or like
Sure.
it was kind of a moment where the curtain was peeled back a little bit, where I was like, maybe we could just throw art shows, like instead of waiting for these things to happen. And came back from New York, like kind of just like energized to open a gallery for what, like that was a moment where it just kind of dawned on me, like we could throw art shows, we could do this where we live. And I started looking for just like a commercial lease, and found a really cool spot in downtown Austin that was below a screen printing shop that the guy who owned it he offered to rent it to me for $500 a month.
Oh,
like
whoa.
all utilities paid. It was just like, he's like, it's empty. We could clean it out and you could have it for like $500. There's no bathroom. There's no parking. And I was like,
Sure.
I don't need any of that. We just need some walls. So
Right.
my wife and I and another couple, Lee Brooks and Katie Friedman, opened a gallery in the early 2000s here called Camp Fig. And that was really when stuff started happening, in that then I had a gallery. So then I had the opportunity to reach out to artists that I admired and I looked up to, and I started curating shows in Austin, kind of with the hopes that then if they were curating shows, they would pull my work out of Austin.
Right.
And that really like opened up my world as far as just meeting tons of art, having a reason to meet other artists instead of just saying like, I like your art. I was able to offer them something like, hey, I'm doing a show in Austin, do you want to be in it? And that was 100% like what helped me get out of
I think you
out
have
of
to
Austin.
do that stuff. I really do. It's like, yes, you can just post cool art on the internet, but there's countless Instagram accounts with really cool art that nobody cares about.
Yeah.
Because art isn't exclusively what the art looks like. It's the story behind it. It's the person who did it. A lot of times people buy art just because of that person's name. And that person's name, they don't buy it exclusively necessarily because of that person's art career, but anything else to do with them. Look at like Ed Templeton. And his art's dope and his photos are dope, and I'm sure they would sell anyways. But they sell for more because it's Ed Templeton, and he was one of the biggest name skateboarders in the world for a good while, right? And that's all like personal branding and stuff. And I think to get in with a lot of those things, because I've gotten chosen for art things that I didn't think I was really deserving of when I got, chosen for them in comparison to other artists that were around me. But it was because I was involved in the community. So I was top of mind with people.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's a big thing. It's like if you curate this art show and you help out all these other people, not with the intent of like, you're going to help me out.
Yeah.
But if you just help out other people, now you're top of mind with these people. They've seen your stuff and it didn't just like whiz by.
Yeah.
They processed it. You know, if it sucks, they still won't help you. But still, you know what I mean? It at least got your stuff in front of them. They processed it. They know who you are. When they see a fit that's right,
Yeah.
they'll be able to hook
And
that
it's,
up.
I mean, it's, you know, it's corny or, you know, the networking aspect, but it really is just personal relationships. So it's
Yeah.
like if you exist solely on social media, you don't ever meet anybody, you don't ever reach out or work on actual things with people, then you just exist as like a digital square, you know, versus like doing what you're doing, traveling, meeting people, like sharing stories and
Totally. Yeah, I mean,
it goes a long way.
If I just did Zoom, it would be hard for me to meet all the people I've met.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't build relationships enough where I would feel comfortable asking somebody to like, you know, and I've had people I didn't even ask that were like, my friend Greg Gatsby I interviewed. He's like a DJ who billboards and stuff out in LA. He's big in that zone. Super cool dude. He's from Boston. He called me out of nowhere the other day and he's like, hey, I have this NASCAR driver who has this really cool story. I was just hanging out with him. You should interview him. And I was like, yeah, gotta find a time to line that up. That's crazy. I never thought I'd interview a NASCAR person, but that's so sick. But I didn't even ask him for anybody. It was just a matter of like, you build relationships with these people, but that wouldn't happen if it was all just a digital thing.
For sure.
You know what I mean? It's you kind of have to have that hands-on. So yeah, you got to give them a shout out. I think when people do have a profound effect on you like that, like I mentioned with Luca Buffo, he was really the reason that I got into painting, you know, which was definitely not his intent from France, but you know, it had a profound impact on me. Who's this person that put together this art show for you?
So his name's Justin Kaufman.
Do you still keep in touch with him at all? Like, whatever happened to him?
I don't know. I'm going to look him after this interview. I'm going to see if I can find him on social media though, because I don't think he's popped up on organically through my feed. So I don't know if he's still making art, but he was the artist who invited me to be in the show in New York, the Decipher show.
Yeah.
Who, and then he was my age, and I was like, oh, you threw a whole art show by yourself.
Yeah.
It's time to start throwing art shows instead of just waiting around for people to show my work.
Well, it's funny because a lot of times we like build stuff up in our minds because we just don't have a perspective on it.
Yeah.
And we think it's so much more, or it takes so much more or whatever to do this. It was the same way with the podcast. I was a guest on somebody else's podcast and I remember driving away from it and I was like, I could totally do that.
Yeah.
Like, I want to do that. And podcasting is super easy to get into for sure. But still, it was like, oh, I could probably do that.
Well, I mean, throwing art shows too, you don't necessarily... Literally the first couple we built a wall in our backyard, just like a plywood wall, and hung up art in the backyard, almost like a garage sale, and then made flyers and dropped them off at coffee shops. So it's like, it's not that much to it. You know, it was like we had to build a wall. And then from there, that's when it was like, we need something. I think it rained one of the days where we're like, we need a roof. Okay, version 2.0. We need a roof so that if it rains, the art show can still go on.
Yeah.
But it seemed like... Prior to doing that, I didn't know anyone who would run a gallery. So I had no frame of reference. It seemed like it would probably be really complicated, but then you get into it and it's like, paint a wall white, hang some art. You know,
totally. Yeah.
Get some wine, invite some people, see what happens.
Yeah, I'm throwing a skateboard art show, I think, end of April. And it's just like, anyone that wants to come on, pick up a broken board from the shop, paint it, and we'll sell them all and have a cool thing. You know, and when I get back, I got it with... Kelsey Wenberg from Artfly. We're going to sit down and plan the whole thing when I get back after this trip. But yeah, you don't have to necessarily know how to do anything. Just go for it with the intent of like, I don't have to make any money. You know, if you don't have huge expectations on that, just do it so you have some experience. And that kind of applies for anything. If you want to start a business, you can.
I mean, did you know anyone who, prior to opening a skate shop, did you know anyone who ran a skate shop, or were you just like,
no,
I'll just set up some accounts and figure this out?
Yeah, I think I emailed Damage Duluth, like the shop up in Duluth, Minnesota, and was like, hey guys, I kind of want to do this. Like, is anyone down to help? I think I emailed them because this was before I had Instagram. And I think I emailed Central Board Shop in Wausau, and both of, you know, the owners were like, yeah, what do you need? Like, that's awesome. So sick, you know? And I guess I went into it with the idea of like, I made a lot more money before that. I was in sales forever and I worked at Verizon and I was making really good money. And I think I went into it with the mindset of like, well, realistically, if I just like fail at this horribly, I can go back to working at Verizon and dig myself out of the financial hole that I'm putting myself in. Yeah. If I had to, which was kind of a fortunate situation to be in.
For sure.
But still, no, I went into it with like, not only that, I've been in so many skate shops, and no offense to skate shops, but a lot of them aren't run particularly well because it's just skaters that don't know what the heck they're doing. Yeah. So I've been in there and I've done retail and I'm like,
You're like, even if I land somewhere in the middle here.
Yeah, like, I feel like I could like make this happen. You could always bartend at night or something to like float your bills if you had to. So anyways, getting back to it. So you were a writer for Thrasher, but you still work for Thrasher? Or
yeah. So almost 10 years ago, we were... so I've been working for the magazine for about a decade as a writer and illustrator.
Yeah.
And the managing editor was leaving, and I remember Mike Burnett hit me up. It was very like coincidental in that we found out we were having our second child.
Yeah. I'd
been freelancing for a long time, which was pretty stressful.
Right.
And found out we were having another kid, and I was like, man, I maybe I should get a job. Like I should. And I was looking into graduate programs. I was like, maybe I'll get an MFA. Maybe I'll teach, become a professor. And then Mike Burnett hit me up. He was like, hey, we're looking for a new managing editor for Thrasher. If you know anyone, we got a couple months, but just let me know. And I was like, kind of light bulb went off, where I was like, hey,
what about me?
can I do it? And everyone there was kind of surprised that I would want to do it, but I needed a job, period. I was like, I need some kind of financial security, because having two kids is pretty stressful in general. I kind of just like threw my name in the hat. I was like, if you don't find anyone else, I'm here. I would love to, talk about it. And I didn't have a real clear understanding even what the job was.
Yeah.
But Tony Vitello, the owner of the magazine, came down for a South by Southwest death match. We went and grabbed a coffee and kind of talked about it. And he was pretty honest about it. He's like, it's always been in-house. We've never had anyone do it who's not in the office.
Right.
He's like, but he's like, you're kind of one of the last stops before the mag goes to print, if you were to do this. So he's like, there will be no question mark on whether you're doing your job or not. If the mag doesn't go to print, you've screwed up somewhere along the way. So he's like, we could try it for a couple magazines and see if the workflow works without you being in the office. They were willing to give me a shot, and that was almost 10 years ago. So,
and you still have that same position with them?
Yep.
So what do you oversee with it? Like what exactly does that job entail, I guess?
It's managing all of the print content that's in the magazine. So essentially all of the words come through me. So
you proofread it all and edit like
Yep. A lot of copy editing and proofing and formatting for the art department.
Wow.
Mike Burnett works as the photo editor and the editor of the magazine. So he's calling shots as far as like figuring out what the content is, what the articles are going to be, and he's working with advertisers and he'll kind of put forth like, hey, here's what's in the next magazine. This is like here's our bullet points, and then we'll go through it, and then the two of us reach out to contributors, and then I start working on all the text as far as like if someone's going to interview someone, I need to touch base and be like, when are you doing it? How are you doing it? Are you handing us an audio file? Are you going to transcribe it? Is someone else going to transcribe it? And just keeping tabs on all of our contributors and making sure that all of the text in the mag is legible and as good as it can be. And some of that involves like, it's a lot of writing. Like a lot of times we'll get articles that are not really print ready. So it's like using stuff as kind of notes to write from. And it's all over the place though. But at the end of the day, it's just all of the text is coming through my my laptop over there.
Crazy, all the way here in Austin, Texas. With how massive Thrasher has become simply because of like Rihanna wearing it and stuff and people not knowing about the mag, it's cool that it's like still in skateboarders' hands for such an extended peried of time, they've kept it that way rather than just hiring whoever. It's been one of the few things that, I mean, sure, there's advertisements of this, that, or whatever, but it's always stayed true to it, which I think skateboarding as a whole appreciates a lot.
I don't think they've ever, I could be wrong here, I don't think they've ever had like the need to put out an ad, like a classified ad for any position. I don't think they've ever posted a position. Right. I think if you've ever worked for that High Speed Productions, it's through someone like bringing you in to the organization, which is really cool because then it's it's not like you're just out trying to hire random people. It's like same deal with like Burnett hiring me. He was like, I know a guy, like I found this guy in Austin. I'm vouching for him. Let's give him a shot.
Yeah. Well, and then you gave me a shot because I was in your subconscious because you've seen Passion Board Shop printed a whole bunch of times. So you just knew somehow with that huge listing. So doing that obviously is like a very full-time job. How is your art? For one, I don't understand how you can possibly do a board company, which is Roger, and you've done board companies before, as well as like have an art space and do art shows and stuff. Like, how do you manage your time, and what are you currently doing outside of Thrasher? Because that seems like a full-time job as it is.
It is, yeah, it's totally full-time. The board company, I definitely have help with that. So that's like my buddy Stacy Lowry is a partner in that. So if I'm too busy, he can help with like layout stuff, or if it's like, hey, we need a sales sheet to send to a distributor, whatever it is, he can jump in there. And then it's through No Comply here in town. So Elias Bingham is an owner there. Mike Labeled works there. He helps. Max Taylor is one of our skaters. He helps with sales. So it's not like it's just me.
Oh, sure.
But I'm responsible for all the graphics at the end of the day. So I just try to budget in, figure out when we have deliverables, or like, oh, if we need 6 new boards by this date, I just whittle away at it when I have downtime.
Do you still have time to do fine art then on the side, or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, not a ton. It's more based on like, I kind of pick and choose, like, because I don't have time to just sit and paint. Like, I can't just sit around and make fine art like I did when I was in my 20s. But I'm going to do a show with Jeremy Fish in San Francisco in December. He has a little gallery space in San Francisco. Cool. It's pretty small, so I was like, that's digestible. Like, I can nibble away at this. So he sent me photos of the space. It was like, do whatever you want. You know, you could just do like one big piece. I don't know. You could make a zine. You could do I don't care what you do. I just want you to come up here and do it. But so that's something like I put on the calendar. I might not do any other art shows for the year. I might just like try to make 10 paintings or something and just work on it over the course of 12 months to do that. But it's for sure just like my fine art output is radically throttled from what it was when I was, from 20 years ago.
So what are the goals then? Where do you want to be doing things exactly the way you're doing for the next foreseeable future, or are you hoping to eventually kind of get more into having time to do that by, passing off different responsibilities for things? Like, where are you trying to go?
I enjoy painting. I like drawing more personally. So it's like, and I've always enjoyed doing commercial artwork. Like from growing up skateboarding, I love doing stickers. I love doing board graphics. I love doing t-shirt graphics. And I love knowing that you're making something that any kid could potentially get. It's not like, I made this. How much is it? It's $1,000. Oh, I'll never buy it.
Yeah, sure.
It's unattainable for a lot of people unless you collect art or you're a grown up with expendable income. So yeah, as far as like the foreseeable future, I love just making art for the sake of making art. Don't have that much time to do it, but I'm fully satisfied. Like my creative output, I feel like it fully satisfies that urge for me to make stuff because I get to make skateboards and t-shirts and stickers, and I still do freelance. So just worked on a project with the America that'll come out this summer to do graphics on shoes. And that's like no part of me is like feels like my soul is not fulfilled because I'm not.
Well, you're not getting hired as a graphic designer doing a bunch of different stuff. At least people recognize what your art is and they want to hire you for your art. And with Roger especially, it's right. You have so much creative freedom with the art that you are creating that it's not really limiting you in that way.
It's for sure. It's not. I mean, that's not art directed at all because it's just I show stuff to the team. So if they're like, I don't really want my name on that, I'm like, oh, okay, well,
sure.
What do you want? There's some like it's cool that there's input from the writers to where they get what they want as far as a board graphic, but kind of no rules there. So it's just kind of like I can come up with the dumbest ideas I want. No one's gonna tell me it's not a good idea to put it on a board.
Are you guys ever gonna capitalize on Austin Emilio's Walking Dead and do a graphic that's like your character as a zombie or something?
I don't think so. I don't. I think he enjoys keeping. I by no means is he. Would not want people to know who he is as far as like he's a very well-known actor, but I think he enjoys keeping like
it seems very separate, right? Like a lot of people when they want like it's not like you watch the Roger video that just came out in Thrasher however long ago, a month or I don't know, I watched it, but it's not like you watch that and you're like that's the Walking Dead guy. Most of the kids watching it have no idea.
For sure. And it's not as if we're going to do like you get the zombie intro for your part. It's more like I mean, I think it's cool when people do all kinds of stuff. So like knowing that he's an actor, I think it's really cool just because it's like a cool creative output.
Having him doing multiple things like that, and I mean, it's same thing like you have in Board Company, and then doing creative writing and doing the different things. Being able to have different lanes that you can go into. For me, if I didn't, I would get burnt out super fast.
Yeah.
Between being able to switch kind of between the show, my shop, and art, whatever I'm really drawn to in that moment that I'm motivated for, I can channel my energy into, and I love that I have multiple ones. So I'm sure he's the same way.
I would imagine. Yeah,
it's just funny watching him on the 9 Club. Being like, oh, okay, he's a skateboarder. I had no idea like how good he was.
Yeah. I mean, he shreds. Like he's like legitimately ripping.
Oh, totally. But I had no idea. I really didn't know when I watched the interview. I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't even know that dude skated. Whatever. I've seen the show. And then seeing all of a sudden, kind of after that, he started to trickle in on the Roger thing, and now having like full parts and stuff. I'm like, what in the world?
Yeah.
This guy's
like he's real. I mean,
yeah, he's sick.
Without needing to do it, it's like he's out skating, working on video parts, working harder. That work is like I mean, you got to enjoy doing it,
right? But the money comes from he gets paid a lot more for his time acting than he would for skating.
Yeah,
so the fact he still puts that energy
for
into
sure,
it is
it's
cool.
like it's really cool and it's inspiring that it's a testament to how much he loves skateboarding. Though that he doesn't.
Totally.
I mean, he's getting hurt. Like he's legitimately like falling down huge banks, and it's like you don't have to do that. It's cool that he wants to do that because he enjoys the process.
Well, it's in the same thing. I mean, even with editing for Thrasher and doing all the other things that you do, if you did those same jobs for any other industry, the money would be a lot more because there's just more money that's being made.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you're in the skate industry, it's because you specifically want to be in the skate industry. So if anyone that can make a living doing that, it's like, damn, that's the dream. Yeah. As much as we wish that we all had a little bit more expendable income and didn't have to work as much as we do, it's incredible that it works at all. Coming towards the end of the show, because I know you have other things that you got to do eventually. I always ask the same question.
Got to work on the magazine.
Well, you do got to work on the magazine. Yeah, you got to like, how sometimes they misprint a little bit where it's like a whole list of names, but one is a little more bold.
In the magazine?
Yeah, not on purpose, but like the text seems like it's a little more bold on this page. I feel like you got a little bit more bold Passion Board Shop in the shop listing, just like a tiny bit so your eye sees it.
I'll send an email. See
I've
what
gotten
we can do.
I've gotten so many messages like DMs from people that took a took a shot, a picture with their phone of the mag going, dude, did you know you're in the mag? I'm like, fuck yeah, I know I'm in every Thrash. That's so sick. I know it's like just a tiny little thing.
Yeah, the shop list, right?
But yeah. But just growing up skateboarding, you see that and it's like, whoa. Yeah. Anyways, I always ask the same question at the end of every show because I think when you do things that you're really passionate about for a living, you end up having a lot of really unique experiences that mean a lot to you, and they're not usually financially related. They're meeting this person or going on this trip or doing, working with Burnett and all kinds of stuff like that. So what's a story you can share of a unique experience you're really grateful for, but it only happened because you chose this path?
This would be a story that I shared with you when we were not recording, but I met Jeremy Fish through doing art shows. I think I did an art show in LA. We both met there, and I'd been aware of his work. He had a canvas and Thrasher years before I did anything with the magazine, and then he had a comic and slap magazine called The Big Stupid that I just loved. Love his art. He seemed like a funny dude. I got to meet him, and it's an instance of do meet your heroes. Like, he's just a great person. We became really good friends, and I was in San Francisco at his studio. I don't even know when this was. We'll say 10 years ago, whenever it was. And he mentioned a friend of his was going to stop by while we were there. So he was like, oh, I got a buddy popping by. He's going to hang out for a little bit. And his buddy was Aesop Rock, who came over to Jeremy. And I already felt like a little kid being in Jeremy Fish's studio. Like, it's the novelty of these relationships doesn't wear off. Like, I still feel very thankful that we're friends, and I get to like talk to him about art and pick his brain. But yeah, being in his studio and then Aesop Rock showing up and me just trying to keep it together and not be a weirdo or not just make it seem like I was super cool with that. That was a moment where I was like, if I hadn't paid to go to LA to go to this art show, I wouldn't have met Jeremy. Might not be at his or his studio right now, and would not have gotten to meet Aesop Rock, who is also just such a sweetheart, a really genuine, cool dude.
And to meet him in that kind of a way, rather than just like going to a signing or something.
Yeah, I wasn't, I didn't, Yeah, it was just fully, he was just relaxed, hanging out with his buddy Jeremy and some other skater who was in the studio.
I interviewed Bryson Roach, like his actual last name is Roach. He's the creative director for the band Papa Roach. His older brother's Jacoby, the singer. And we were interviewed, got to talking, hung out. He's just the homie. And he was like, yeah, we're going to be coming through Wisconsin. What are you up to? I was like, dude, coming to hang out with you, obviously. So I drove down to Milwaukee. He gave me free tickets and stuff. Told me to stay after the show. And he's like, you want to come kick it? Like, duh. So all of a sudden, and I didn't like grow up necessarily a huge fan of Papa Roach, but everyone knows him. Like, obviously, like everybody. And I found myself backstage with nobody else, just like the band. I was eating their pizza, drinking their beer, kicking it with the Papa Roach dudes. And it was, you know what I mean? It's like that where I'm like, what?
Yeah.
How did I get here? This is so nuts. Yeah. Like I took a video of Bryson and Jacoby wanted it. So Jacoby put his cell phone number in my phone. Not that I could really hit him up anyways, but he did. He's like, okay, text me that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sick. I've never texted him outside of that, but still just kind of like whoa, this is crazy that even happened. Well, anyways, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. How can people best follow your work, support anything that you want to do? If after this they want to go, I don't know, buy a board or buy a print or whatever, how can they follow what you do and support you?
Instagram would probably be the easiest way. So my account is at Sieben, my last name, SIEBEN _ up, UP. Which is a soda pop joke. Like when Instagram was new, and my last name means 7, and just set up the account, and I was like, I don't know, 7-Up's funny, and then that was however long ago, 10 years ago.
Nobody else gets that joke.
No one gets it, and it's just been died now. It's just I think it's funny that it's so dumb that I made a soda pop joke as on a whim. I didn't know it. I'm like, Instagram, is that? I don't know. Is that like Facebook? I don't know, and. Not that I'm stuck with. I could change it at any time, but I'm holding on to my 7-Up soda pop joke.
Well, and it's hard on Instagram. A lot of people don't remember what your actual... I'm sure a lot of people know your name, but still, a lot of people that follow you, that you've met or whatever, they've seen Sieben up so many times.
Yeah.
But they never see Michael Sieben.
Right.
So if you changed your handle, all of a sudden they'd be like, how do I find this person?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not, especially when you've built any kind of career or connections through that, it's really hard to change it. I'm in the same way. Granted, mine is just the name of the show, but still, if I changed it, it'd be really hard to get a hold of anybody.
Yeah.
And I can't change it to Chris Johnson. There's so, whatever.
It's probably more than one Chris Johnson.
Yeah. And eventually I hope to get the little blue check thing, but it's not going to happen as Chris Johnson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So anyways, but yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Passion Pod. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. We'll see you soon.